Hello. What's up? What is good? What is up? It's Jordan at Texans Thoughts, and we're back finally with another live stream. How y'all doing? Can we get an audio check? Just want to make sure everything's all good in the building before I keep talking. Excuse me, a little sick. Don't have my regular setup either, but hey, we're all good. What's good? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming through. Appreciate y'all joining the stream. As I always have been recently taking a lot of time off, not having my regularly scheduled videos, but I appreciate y'all always being here for me when I am back. This is an upgraded setup, a little life update. Last couple months, it's been 2 months since my last video, so family moved into a new house, so it's a little bit of a different setup. I don't have my regular nice crispy clean camera, but that's all good. So new house, new setup, new jerseys. You guys know this Foster one, this Petrie one. If you follow me on Twitter, you know the story behind that one. But absolute fire, man. Really, really grateful for them, and really, really grateful for you guys. Where have I been? I've been working, man. I've been working. 4 months ago, I started a new job working full-time for the 33rd team, which is essentially an NFL media company. And it's been crazy, man. I wouldn't be able to do it without your guys' support. Being able to make it to this point of being able to work full-time in football, man, is a dream, I've had for going on 4 years now, and I honestly didn't think I would hit it, at least this quickly. So thank you so much for the support. You guys, show off the Petrie t-shirt. Where's the eBay one? Y'all want to see it? I'll go grab it for y'all. 1 second. So I have 5 Texans jerseys now. 2 legitimate ones. One which was like part of an old sponsorship. Got a little goat on there, if you know, you know. Texans Thoughts. This was a little custom jersey sponsorship. Another one thrifted down in Austin, Texas. Not Austin, Texas. Yeah, that's where I was. I was in Austin, Texas. Went to UT versus Kansas. Got this bad boy at a thrift store nearby UT campus. And then the infamous. Who the excuse me? Wow, how do I get this in the frame? Excuse me? What is this? What is this dollar store ass? Oh my god. Oh my, what is this? They don't even got the outline around the oh my goodness. My goodness gracious. Do you see a Texans logo in sight? Is there one? I don't see one. It is what it is, though. It all ended up being worth it in the end. Signed by JP. Best initials. How do I do this? It's always confusing to me. There we go. Anyways, now that that's out the way, Brie just said something about the Gannon interview on Sunday. Okay, Saturday. Oh yeah, perfect. Now that that's out the way, we can get into the meat and potatoes of the stream. What I wanted to talk about. Let me see if I still know how to do this. See if I know how to do this. Boom. Nothing crazy, man. But that's kind of the agenda for the day. We'll go over, Lovie Smith being fired, Nick Caserio, and I guess Cal McNair's press conference covering that. We'll talk about the McNair's being, maybe we'll change the tone. And then we'll go through the head coach candidates, and we'll also probably talk some NFL draft. So let's start it off, boys. I am rusty, man. I am rusty. It's been a minute. All right. Lovie Smith fired not even 24 hours after the Texans beat the Indianapolis Colts. What are your guys' thoughts on that one? Do you think Lovie really, he knew it was coming and this was his one last to the Texans ownership and he stuck up his and said, you know what, we're going for 2. We're winning this game? It makes sense, man. It honestly does. Can't really blame him. As an NFL coach, you want to win games. That's your goal at the end of the day. That's what you're judged off of. So, of course, that's what you're going to tell the players. Of course, that's what you're going to go through. So, understand Lovie from that point of view, and obviously understand Nick Caserio, Cal McNair making the cut, making the call that they had to make. Look, Lovie Smith was never supposed to be the guy. He's not some 36-year-old up-and-coming, genius that every team in the NFL wants to hire, right? Where were his head coach interviews last season? Nowhere. It was just us. This is not some hot commodity. This is a guy who is his third head coaching gig now in the NFL. There's a reason he got fired the first 2 times, and there's a good reason why he was fired this time. So, while racism is a problem going around the NFL programs and coaching processes, this was not an example of it. This is not a good example to use, in my opinion. So I'm kind of tired of that narrative, to be honest. Between David Culley, between Lovie Smith, neither of them got results. They were both seen as short-term bridge coaches, and they both essentially lost the respect of the players in the locker room. So at that point, you got to go. And as we've heard more reports come out on the reasoning as to why the Texans have fired him, reports have come out saying that Lovie was, a very closed-minded, old-school coach who wasn't receptive to feedback, wasn't receptive to the players and what they wanted to do and how they wanted to be coached. And that's just not going to fly nowadays. That's really not going to fly. It's an old-school mentality. Get out of here. So with that being said, 2 coaches, 2 years, that pattern still can't continue. Even everything what I've said with Lovie Smith, that pattern cannot continue into this next year. Unless you have like an Urban Meyer situation, but then goodness gracious, that's just, you can't even, I don't even think about that. So this next coach needs to have some stability, needs to have at least a year, an extra year, maybe 2-3 years of stability, of security, or else future candidates down the line are never going to take this job seriously. 3 coaches, 3 years. You're absolutely right, dude. You're absolutely right, man. That's a travesty. Before we get into the candidates, because you're absolutely right, Balin, hit it on the head. Literally every candidate we're interested in is great, is better than Lovie Smith. The search is going better than it was last year, and we'll get into those names in a second. What I do want to get into first, what changed, Nick? What changed? Anybody who watched the press conference? Who watched the press conference Monday and listened to Nick Caserio and Cal McNair talk about Lovie Smith and talking about the direction of the team and whatnot? Because if you watched it, I feel like if you've watched that press conference and you've watched previous press conferences of the Nick Caserio era, he looked like a completely different dude. He sounded like a completely different dude. Early Nick Caserio era, very confident. Very confident he's going to turn this around. He will go down swinging, doing whatever is necessary for this organization. Stuff you love to hear, right? Stuff you want to hear. This press conference, he took a lot of self-accountability for where the Texans are at 2 years into his GM tenure. But if you can tell by his tone, he was a lot more down. He was a lot more, it almost felt like he was defeated. And I'm not saying he actually is or whatnot, but that's kind of how it came off. It seemed like he was less confident in his job. It didn't seem like he was the same guy who's going to say, I'm going down swinging. So to me, that said a lot, especially because Nick Caserio is not the type of guy to say a lot in his press conferences. But you can tell by the tone, you can tell by the fact that he said himself that if this new head coach doesn't deem him the guy to turn the Texans around, this is me paraphrasing just to be clear, if he doesn't deem him the guy to turn things around, he will accept that and he will deal with basically getting fired by the new head coach, which is absolute craziness. And to me, kind of plays into the fact that, hey, this guy is maybe a little less confident than he was before. So, GMs don't really just, the other thing to that is GMs don't really offer that point up on their own, right? Why would they kind of go out of the way and say, oh, sure, I'll accept being fired. Like if there was no pressure, if he had never been told like, hey, this is a possibility. If this new guy doesn't like you, you're gone. If he had never been told that, he would have no reason to offer that information. But clearly that is what he's been told by his bosses, by the McNairs. This is my read on the situation. This is not, I don't know Nick. But so why the change in tone from Nick? Why the change? Have you heard the Metro news? I have heard the Metro news. I'm very glad. I very am hopeful that he can be a contributor for this team. I hope he can live out his dream of playing in the NFL. A very talented dude. And I'm excited for him, man. Yeah. Coyote. You got an interesting take. You got an interesting take. What changed, huh? What changed with Nick? Is the more likely scenario that Cal McNair is finally, stepping up to the plate and being a more aggressive owner? Oh, sorry. The other thing I forgot to mention is Cal said that he's going to step in and be more involved in the search. Do we think that's coming purely from Cal? Do we think that's coming from another McNair? Be it Janice, be it Hannah? I don't know, man. Damn, I can't even get the shrug in the camera frame. That's sad. Or Manhattan, not OGs, no. So yeah, ownership has been stepping in. They're not happy with the results. And they have good reason to not be happy with the results. You look at other rebuilds around the league. You look at the Jets, just missed out the playoffs. You look at the Lions, just missed out the playoffs. You look at the Giants, made the playoffs. The Jags went from having the number 1 pick in 2 straight years to making the playoffs. It's possible if you make the right hires, you make the right decisions, it's possible to turn around the league worst team to a playoff team. Nick hasn't done it yet. So, of course, his seat is going to be a little hot. And this is the first time in the Nick Caserio era that I think it's ever really been hot. And I think that it's ever really been this evident through Cal stepping in and through Nick's messaging and tone. Craziness to me. Craziness to me. Ooh, Genie Buzz 2.0. As a Lakers fan, that concerns me, my dude. That concerns me, Nolf. Yes, sir, Andrew. You already know. We're going to talk about this in a second, Matt, as we get through these head coach candidates. You got to pause, my dude. I read on Twitter that Stroud might not declare because of NIL money, which would just be kind of crazy to me. I'm all pro go get the bag, but can NIL really outpay like being a top 5 draft pick in the NFL? Like, I mean, I guess he's gonna be that no matter what, but like, I would like to see like someone who's uber competitive. I think you would expect them to want to be in the NFL as quickly as possible and develop as quickly as possible rather than just get a bag. But I don't know. That was just my take on the situation. Alrighty. We talked about Lovie Smith getting fired. We talked about Nick Caserio's press conference. We talked about ownership stepping in. Now let's get into the coaching search. Y'all. Actually, there's one thing I wanted to talk about before. I'm looking at my notes here. Before we get into that, we've been talking about this new head coach could potentially fire Nick Caserio if they don't align on their vision, their philosophy, conceding power and whatnot. If that is the case, if that truly is the case, they need to kind of get a move on with the search. They kind of need to because free agency is in March. Let's say you make this hire late Jan, early Feb. You have basically a month to find a new GM, a new assistant GM, new director, player, person, all that stuff, all these new coaches and personnel people that you need to find before free agency, unless you just want to keep the same guys, which is maybe the case. But in my opinion, if you want to do things right, the right way, when you clean out the GM, you got to clean out everybody else. So with that in mind, I would like to hope that the Texans can make their hire relatively soon, hopefully before the end of the month, but we'll see. I know Aaron Wilson, very reputable beat reporter, in the Texans world, he reported that the Texans will take their time, at least 2 to 3 weeks. So we'll see on that. But there's just a little thought I want to throw out there. Alrighty. Let's go to the head coach search, man. The head coach search. I'm just reading comments real quick. Okay. So 8 names have been named. We even had the first interview be completed today as Ben Johnson. The other names are Ben Johnson, D'Amico Ryans, Shane Steichen, Ezra Evero, Mike Kafka, Jonathan Gannon, Sean Payton, and just today, Thomas Brown. Now, we won't go into super duper depth on all of these today, but we will at least 3, 4, depending on how much y'all are enjoying this. We will keep it going. Larry Payton says, will Nick Caserio stay in his GM line and leave coaching and staff to the new head coach? I think he will, Larry. I think he will. Because think about it. When he first stepped in, Nick Caserio was not only the GM, he was the pseudo head coach. All right? David Culley was honestly a puppet. Nick Caserio wanted to be the guy. He wanted to be like Bill Belichick, where he has control over personnel, and he also has some say in coaching. That's what he wanted to bring to the Texans. First year, he hired David Culley's assistants, rumoredly, to say. He was on the headset in games, helping with in-game management. And he hired David Culley, someone who was never supposed to be a head coach. So year 1, peak of Nick Caserio's power, peak of his responsibilities, peak GM, but also low-key head coach. Right? Year 2, David Culley gone. New head coach candidates come in. One head coach candidate I know did not take the job because Nick would not let him hire his own coordinators. So Lovie Smith gets hired. Nick Caserio reportedly no longer on the headset. Lovie Smith gets to hire his own coordinator. So you see slowly, year by year, Nick is conceding a little bit of power each year, becoming a little bit more GM, a little bit less head coach. And so now this third year, with, again, bad results, you would have to think that that trend continues to go down and he continues to concede some power. And I think he needs to understand that if you are to hire a top-tier head coach candidate, you're going to have to let them pick their staff. You're going to have to concede some of that power. It's going to be a balance, not a dictatorship. And so I think he will. Can we get some Tim Hortons in here? Shout out to any other Canadian viewers. Make a tier list. This is a great point, AB, because I do have them in tiers, and I may have to do this really soon, honestly. All right, let's talk about Ben Johnson, y'all, because he is the first guy for it to be reported that we requested the interview. He was the first guy for us to schedule an interview, and the first guy for it to be confirmed that, it happened today. Head coach candidates are not spurning the Texans. They are not avoiding us like the plague. They will take the interview. It is an opportunity. There's only 32 of them in the league. And, man, I like where this head coach search is going. Because each candidate on this board so far, man, they are exciting. They're young. They're either young or very proven. Most of them all young. And then we talk about Sean Payton, very proven. We know what his deal is. So I like this. For me, general philosophy-wise, what I'm looking for in the head coach, I would prefer an offensive guy because I think we need to draft a future quarterback, and I think being able to maximize that quarterback needs to be priority number 1. After that, being an offensive guy, you really need a leader, man. You really need a good leader, someone that will connect with players, be a player's coach, but then also know how to rile them up and get them to buy in. And then it's staff. What type of connections do you have around the league? What type of staff can you build out? Because for an offensive head coach, you need a really good DC. And a lot of these guys are going to be first-year head coaches, so they need an experienced guy on the staff with them. So I'm right with you there, Balin. I want an offensive guy. JD, where you at? Nick has to let the head coach cook because who let Nick cook, bro? Absolutely, man. All right. Enough diddly-daddlying. Let's get into Ben Johnson. First guy that confirmed the interview. It was done today. There's a lot to like about Ben Johnson. He's in my top tier. We will talk about the draft situation, Chris. We'll get into that after I get into these head coach candidates. Just want to share some thoughts with y'all. Give a little bit of a breakdown of each of these guys. Just what I've found in my research, what I like about them, what I don't like about them. All right. Ben Johnson. He's a young guy, 36 years old. All right. He's got that former player experience. He was a former walk-on quarterback at University of North Carolina, graduated with a degree in computer science and math, started coaching at Boston College. Then he went to Miami. He made his rise, Miami Dolphins, that is. Started as an offensive assistant, then assistant quarterback coach, then tight end coach, then wide receiver coach. So right there, those are 4 different roles, 4 diverse roles where he's learning each of these position groups. And that's how you can kind of see that he, built up his offensive expertise, right? And I think it's really interesting. He's coached for 2 NFL teams, Miami Dolphins and the Detroit Lions. And both of those stops, he was there, and the current head coach at the time got fired, and a new head coach got brought in. And typically when that current head coach gets fired, the entire staff gets wiped, right? But there's the rare case that the best of the best that were still on the staff get kept. And Ben Johnson got kept on the staff, not just once in Miami after Adam Gase was fired, but again with Detroit once Dan Campbell took over. So I think that says a lot that multiple head coaches like what he brings to the table and couldn't hire a better guy than him twice in his young career at 36 years old, right? So the other thing I like about Ben Johnson, and this is different than other guys such as, another offensive guy like Shane Steichen, for example. What I like about Ben Johnson is he's experienced and he's helped spearhead a rebuild for a young team in the Detroit Lions. He's seen firsthand what a good first-year, young head coach has to do in Dan Campbell. And Dan Campbell is one of the best ones out there right now, man. He's really, really good. So I think he's had a good role model there, and he hopefully can take some of his, culture building, leadership skills, and CEO traits that Dan Campbell does so well. And I think the other thing with him and Campbell is you see that they are such an aggressive duo within games. That's the next aspect we'll talk about Ben Johnson. His in-game management, his offensive X's and O's, it's top tier, man. He's helped turn that Detroit unit around. This year, they ranked top 5 in most offensive categories and top 10 in basically all of them. Detroit, the Lions, with Jared Goff. Jared Goff looked like absolute trash before Ben Johnson turned him around, right? So he's shown the ability to get the most out of a quarterback. He's shown the ability to turn a young wide receiver like Amon-Ra St. Brown into a legit wide receiver 1 and have a breakout year. He's shown the ability to get creative with his offensive personnel. Penei Sewell out here motioning across the line of scrimmage and catching balls. Craziness, right? So I think he fits the mold of the young offensive guru who really knows how to maximize a quarterback and get the most out of his offense. Right. The other thing I like, a little nugget, is they're really good in, 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, those 4th and 3rd down and short situations. Really, really good with that. Really aggressive on 4th down. And that's what you need, man. That's what you need. Situational play calling, situational awareness. That's what separates the, Andy Reids and Sean McVays from the Matt Nagy's of the world. Situational awareness. So love that. You also, if you watch his press conferences, he's not like a Nick Caserio. He's not going to beat around the bush and say nothing. He will answer your questions thoughtfully. And I like that about him in terms of personality. And you watch him mic'd up at the Senior Bowl. You watch the Hard Knocks of the Detroit Lions. They have an inside the den thing, behind the scenes, basically. He's a player's coach for sure. He's someone that's not afraid to be hard on players, not afraid to, call them out when they need to be called out. And he's a teacher at the end of the day. He's a really good teacher. So A lot of positives involved with Ben Johnson. The last thing I will say is what type of staff can he put together? I'm not as optimistic about his as I am some of the other guys that we will talk about in a second, because he is a younger guy and he is a little less experienced than some of the other young guys on this list. But the best name I could find for a defensive coordinator, Chris Koserek. He coached with him for 1 year in the Miami Dolphins in 2018. Chris Koserek has a long history of being a great D-line guru with the Dolphins, with the Lions, and with the 49ers most recently, helping coach up Nick Bosa, getting career years out of D Ford, improving Charles Omenihu to have a career high in sacks this year. If that guy can fix up Charles Omenihu, bring him here. Bring him here. So he's always been a D-line coach, and he may get the DC job if DeMeco Ryans leaves for a head coach position, but I'm not sure DeMeco Ryans is going to take a head coach job. Not sure. That's Chris Koserek. Matt Burke is another defensive coordinator name to look out for. He's with the Dolphins 2016 to 2018. Lou Anarumo, this is more of a pipe dream. He's currently the Bengals DC, and he's really highly thought of. I don't know why he would potentially be gone from the Bengals and come here, but I don't know. Maybe if we entice him with a big fat check and an assistant head coach title. Vance Joseph is another option. And then for O-line coach, we've got John Benton, who was with the Texans for, I believe, 6 years, maybe 7 years. He spent time with the Niners and most recently the Jets as their O-line coach and run game coordinator. And you look at the Jets this year, the only thing they could damn do on offense is run the ball. That was the only thing they could do with Breece Hall before Breece Hall went down. And they did that despite having a pretty horrible offensive line in terms of talent and a lot of injuries, from Mekhi Becton being out too. So that's the staff. That's the rundown for Ben Johnson. I would absolutely love for him to be the new head coach of the Texans because of all those reasons I've laid out. And I think he would be in tier 1 for me. He's kind of like a 1A, 1B situation for me. Ben Johnson. Staff is the only reason I don't like Ben. Yeah, I think it's out of all of those variables, out of all those factors that I mentioned, Nolf, staff would probably be his weak link, I guess you could say. That's the next dog. That's the next dog on the list. Do you think Nick asked Ben Johnson who he will draft? That's a good question. I don't know if they'll really get into that. I would hope that they would. I would hope that they kind of exhaust all questions, exhaust all options, everything under the sun. And I think he would. But then I also was watching NFL Network, and it was either Tom Pelissero or Mike Garofalo. But they were saying that what they've heard of Nick Caserio and how he is in these head coach interviews is actually pretty interesting. They've heard that, when you sit down, you do an interview, like you start it off with pleasantries, right? Hi, how you doing? Get to know someone. Typically the owner starts it off, little casualties, throw them some warm-up questions, right? Ease into it. Apparently, Nick Caserio, none of that. None of that. No hi, how you doing? No handshake. I don't know about that. I'm just messing. But he starts with straight into X's and O's. Apparently, he starts with week 13, second quarter, 3:42 to left to play, 2nd and 7. You called this play. Why'd you call this play? Slow down, Nick. Goddamn. So I don't know, man. Apparently his interviews are pretty X's and O's heavy. It was really interesting to me when you hired David Culley and Lovie Smith. But the more you fuck around, the more you find out. Absolutely, dude. Jordan, when should we expect your amazing? Appreciate that, Tony. Probably pretty. I would want to say early April, mid-April. I'm going to be very busy this year with my job. I'm not going to have as much time in years past to do, a full-fledged, as in-depth as I have before a draft guide, but it'll come. It'll come. Early April is my goal. Early April. All righty. We talked about Ben Johnson, QB 1A, 1B with Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator. Yes, I have both those guys over D'Amico Ryans. Yes, I do. Why? Again, I want an offensive guy. I think we need to go quarterback in the first round. And I think the best way to maximize them and their future success is to get a young offensive mind that they can grow with and that can prioritize them. Hey, look, it's me in the background. How do I point my finger? How do I do this? Oh, there we go. That's me. So yeah, that's why Shane Steichen and Ben Johnson are 1A, 1B. And honestly, I kind of go back and forth on them the more I think about it each time. It's a pretty fluid situation. I might put Steichen 1A because he has a little bit more experience than Ben Johnson. So Steichen is also very young at 37 years old, only 1 year older than Ben Johnson. But he has 12 years of coaching experience at the NFL level. 12 years. The other interesting thing is he started as a defensive assistant. So Ben Johnson has only coached the offensive side of the ball. Shane Steichen at least has a year under his belt on the defensive side of things, and he can help him understand, both sides of the ball more. And as a head coach, you need to know both sides of the ball. So he's got 4 years as an offensive coordinator, 2 with the Chargers, 2 with Philadelphia. He's been credited with helping develop Justin Herbert with the Chargers and Jalen Hurts with the Eagles. And the interesting thing about that is they're 2 very different quarterbacks. 2 very different quarterbacks. Herbert has the really big arm, great athlete, but you're not really like running him. He's more of a pocket passer guy. He can run for sure, don't get me wrong, but you're not designing up runs like you are designing up runs for Jalen Hurts. So I think having that versatility, having that adaptability, having that open-mindedness to not just kind of pigeonhole Jalen Hurts into what worked for Justin Herbert, but creating a whole different offense around Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles' strengths. So I think that's, every coach always says, oh, we're going to fit our scheme to the personnel. I'm sure you can find clips of Lovie Smith and David Culley saying that too. But give me damn proof of it. Shane Steichen has done that. Ben Johnson hasn't done that. Ben Johnson has only worked as an OC with Jared Goff. And it's not really anything you can fault Ben Johnson for, but it is a positive for Shane Steichen, in my opinion. So similar to one of the positives I laid out for Ben Johnson and the fact that Ben Johnson has seen Dan Campbell as a first-year head coach and seen how he can, turn a team around, so has Shane Steichen. He's seen it with Nick Sirianni, who everyone doubted in the beginning. Everyone laughed at because he stuttered in the damn press conference. And now, look at Shane Steichen now. Best record in the NFL. So, and the Eagles were what? I want to say an 8-win team or a 7-win team before being a 13 or 14-win team now. Craziness. The other thing with Shane Steichen is he has, with more experience, comes more potential connections. He coached with Frank Reich, the former Colts head coach, former Eagles Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. They coached together on the Chargers from 2014 to 2015. He also coached with Gus Bradley, the current Colts DC, who's been around the league for a while and is, I think, a really good DC. Maybe not a good head coach, but a really good DC. Kind of like Dan Quinn in that mold as well. So Gus Bradley will probably get let go by the Colts. And if he's available, I think that would be a hell of a hire for Shane Steichen to bring on as his DC. And then O-line coach is the other kind of, main position I'm looking at. Main position coach. Joe Delisandris. He was with Steichen and the Chargers as well. Now he's currently with the Ravens. He's one of the best in the league. I don't know if the Ravens will let him go. I really don't, but it was the only connection I could really find that's, sparked my interest. Other connections, linebacker coach, I found Bobby King, ex-Texans coach, now Titans coach. So interesting names out there. The only thing about Shane Steichen, the only thing I don't like about Shane Steichen, because he's pretty much damn near the complete package. The only thing you can really knock him for, in my opinion, is he has a lot of talent to work with. Oh, Money Matt. My guy. Thank you. He's back with the bombs. There's a reason why we call him Money Matt in these streets. Thank you so much, my dude, for the $20. Man, that brings me back such good memories when y'all go crazy back in my prime when I was streaming, and it was like a twice a week type of thing, man. That was crazy, man. That was so much fun. I really appreciate y'all. Y'all couldn't have been doing this without me. Honestly, like fulfilling the dream, working full time in sports, could not do it without y'all supports. Apparently, there's a tweet I need to check out. Mark Berman, longtime reporter for the Texans. What am I looking at here? Mvari. NFL Nike and the Texans, according to Doug Vosek, the team's senior VP marketing communications. For now, the meeting. Blah, blah, blah. Is this what you want me to look at? How do I? Where is this? Boom. So what you want me to look at? The Houston Texans had the media over to Energy Stadium for local CEOs of the marketing instruction process to change uniforms. Uniforms will be live as soon as 2024. We'd love to see it. Honestly, the Texans have had these uniforms for a long, long time, and of course they are, iconic. But I think it is time for a new change as we usher in this new era behind a dang good new head coach. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Where you been? I've been working, man. I've been working. Ooh, the Colts just interviewed Eric Bieniemy. Interesting. I've been working full-time, Owen, with a company called the 33rd Team. We do a lot of NFL content creation, honestly. So if you want to check out our website, check out our YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff, I would very much appreciate it. Missed y'all guys too, man. Missed you guys too. I wish I had the time to stream every week, man. I really wish I did, but this job's got me working 60 hours a week. Monday, Thursday nights, Sunday nights, and now that the playoffs are on Saturday nights too. So it's crazy. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. Where was I? Shane Steichen. Yeah, the one thing I was going to say, the one knock on Steichen is obviously he's had a very talented offensive roster, arguably the most talented offensive roster in the NFL to work with. And the Texans are not that. The Texans don't have their Jalen Hurts. Hopefully they can get them. But most importantly, the Texans do not have an elite offensive line like the Eagles do. They do not have A.J. Brown. They do not have Devontae Smith. They do not have Dallas Goedert, right? So with Ben Johnson and some other guys we'll talk about in a second. With Ben Johnson, we've seen him do more with less. With Shane Steichen, we haven't seen that yet. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but we just haven't seen it yet. So just got to keep that in mind, I missed y'all too, man. I missed y'all too. The GOAT. I appreciate that, y'all. I appreciate that. So look at my man a raise. All right. We talked about Shane Steichen. Let's go into the next guy that's really intriguing me. And I wanted to talk about these three first because they're all kind of similar, of the similar vein. They're all young, up-and-coming offensive coordinators with not like too much experience, but they've gotten results. They have gotten results, and that's what Mike Kafka has done with the New York Giants. Mike Kafka is the youngest of the group that we are planning on interviewing at 35 years old. 35. He's a baby. He is a baby. And his coaching experience says so as well. It's 5 years coaching experience. But let's go back a little bit. Let's rewind because another box he checks off is he's a former player. I love the idea of hiring former players because players respect former players, man. Players respect coaches who have done it before, who have been in their shoes, who can relate to them. So I love that out of Mike Kafka. He was a 4th-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles, where he was a backup quarterback behind Michael Vick. I wonder how that influenced how he looks at the quarterback position. With that Eagles team, he was the head coach of the time was Andy Reid. And Reid has always, for a long time, praised Kafka for, maybe not the most talented guy, but he was the smartest guy in the room all the damn time. Kafka's career didn't last very long, 4 games in his 1 year. And then 5 years later, he started coaching in college at his alma mater in Northwestern. And then just 1 year after Kafka was coaching in the college ranks, Andy Reid handpicked him to be an offensive assistant, offensive quality control for the Chiefs. It's a big jump. It's a big jump in 1 year of college coaching. So this guy is a fast riser for sure. And if Andy Reid likes you, I think that says something, man. I think that says a lot. So started off offensive quality control, then jumped up in 2018 to become their quarterback coach. 2018 also happened to be Mahomes' first Pro Bowl year and his MVP season. You got to give Mike Kafka a little bit of credit there, in my opinion. Nurturing a young and raw Patrick Mahomes. Remember, Patrick Mahomes was not this guaranteed generational prospect. He was not viewed in the same light as Trevor Lawrence. He took a lot of developing. His Texas Tech tape, he looked like a kid just playing recess, man, playing football at recess. So coaching played a lot in that, in my opinion. So 2018 quarterback coach, then 2020. So after 2 seasons, he became the passing game coordinator on top of quarterback coach. And then 2022, he got poached by Brian Daboll to the New York Giants. And he started calling plays this year in the preseason. And the plan was for Daboll to take over in the regular season. But Kafka was so damn good that Daboll said, "You impressed me. Keep it going into the regular season." Which I think says a lot because Brian Daboll is a very good offensive mind, very good offensive play caller. Look at comments real quick. Hey, Patty Storm's in the building. This is like the reason I looked at I knew something. See, everything happens for a reason, man. There's a reason why I had to look at the comments. My boy Patty Storm in the building. I miss your face too, man, Pat. I miss your face too. Appreciate you, my guy. Talking about Kafka, Patty Storm. Talking about Kafka. I know you've been liking Kafka too. Yeah, so his Giants resume, the results he's gotten with the Giants, I think, say a lot. And arguably, not even arguably, I think it's factual to say that out of Mike Kafka, Shane Steichen, and Ben Johnson, Mike Kafka has done the most with the least. You know, the Giants are top 5 and top 10 in a lot of offensive categories. I'm not going to list them all off, but to get a top 10 offense out of the New York Giants when you genuinely only have Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, who the league was not very set on as a starting quarterback, that says a lot. Like, who is on this Giants O-line other than Evan Neal, the rookie that they just drafted? They have no one on that O-line. They have no one in the wide receiver room, no one in the tight end room. They don't have weapons outside of Saquon Barkley. Every NFL defensive coordinator knows they are going to run the ball, and that's the only thing that they can do. And yet still, Saquon Barkley had a rejuvenation of a year. People were calling him comeback player of the year. And that's really hard to do when everyone knows all you got to do is run, right? So not only has he rejuvenated Saquon Barkley, he's also gotten a career year out of Daniel Jones, where now people are looking at him as, all right, we're fine if he's the starter. Let's give him another year now under Mike Kafka, man. Whew. So I think that says a lot. It checks the box of being able to, show results with a young quarterback. And he checks the box of being able to do more with less, which is what the situation he is going to be in Houston with. Right? And I watched some videos on YouTube, about his philosophy as an offensive coordinator. And the one point he likes to drive home that he takes from Andy Reid is you have to prioritize explosive plays. Because not everyone can be Tom Brady. Not everyone can just nickel and dime their way down the field. The more explosive plays you get, the easier it is for your offense to be efficient. That's his offensive philosophy, and that's something Houston desperately needs. They need more explosive plays. So I like my Kafka a lot, man. I haven't looked into kind of what type of staff he could make between his Giants and Chiefs tenure, but the fact that he's only been coaching the NFL for 5 years, I would guesstimate that his staff may be a little bit more limited than someone like Shane Steichen or some of the other more experienced candidates in this search. But he is yet another name that I think is a really good it shows good process of who they are interviewing. I think I worded that right. Those three guys make up. Okay, Shane Steichen and Ben Johnson are in tier 1 with D'Amico Ryans. Tier 2 starts off with Mike Kafka. I think he headlines tier 2 in my opinion. All right, so we're just missing Ryans now. We'll get into Ryans. That's actually a good point, Balin. Okay, so he's got two good tackles. Oh, he's got 2 good tackles. Who else got 2 good tackles? He's tailor-made for this Texans offense, baby. He's tailor-made for it. What casserole we getting today? Ooh. See, the baseline, right? The baseline was a green bean casserole, right? When he first got hired, I said he's a green bean casserole because, like a green bean casserole and Nick Caserio, I've never had a good green bean casserole. I've heard good things about a green bean casserole, but personally, I've never experienced a good one. Just like Nick Caserio, I've heard good things about these Patriots executives. I've heard good things. Never experienced a good one, though. Never experienced a good one. And I think Nick, he's been tasked with a very difficult situation, no doubt. He's had his misses. He's had his hits. Has he hit a home run yet? I don't think so. You could say the Deshaun trade and getting the capital that he got for that is probably his best move. Maybe a triple, I would say. If he hits a home run with this head coach hire and this number 2 overall pick, man, he'll take a step up from the green bean casserole. But right now, 2 years on into the job, I think his positives and his negatives have just about equaled out to the point where I'm not ready to lower him, but I'm not really ready to raise him yet either. So I know that's probably not the answer you wanted to hear, Ziad, but I think he's still roughly a green bean casserole. Mediocre, average, which is fine. We will get into Thomas Brown, absolutely. Patrick Storm, the man of the hour, says he has a decent feeling about Miko. You love to hear it. Oh, he followed up with the eyes emoji. That means something. That means something. Okay, let's get into Miko now that he is on the brain. Wow, I don't have a banner for D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico Ryans. Boom. All right. D'Amico Ryans. Hey, Alpha, thank you for the $2. Yeah, I do remember you, my guy, of course. My homie. What was I going to say? Oh, yes, here's my notes. Okay, D'Amico Ryans. We've seen some interesting reporting on D'Amico Ryans. He's been requested to interview. We've yet to see him actually accept it, and he's not going to be able to interview anyways until after the wildcard weekend. I believe it was Aaron Wilson reported that he doesn't expect at the time for D'Amico to be interested in the job. And I know I've seen some other big-time reporters say that they would not be surprised if D'Amico doesn't even take a job this year. Patrick Storm says you can read the photo I sent, just not the last message with the quotes. Oh, and look what we got here. A text from the one and only. I love that the last text I sent to you, Pat, was just 2 eye emojis. That's amazing. All right. I can read the photo I sent, just not the last message with the quote. Okay. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 texts here. I can read the first 3, but number 4 stays in the phone. Can they see the reflection of it? They can't, right? Okay, that would have been bad. All right. From Mr. Patrick Storm himself, this is a message he has received. Okay, you ready? Nick said the reports about certain coaches not being interested, farther from the truth. Also said if he had to back off, he would, if that's what's best for the team. Okay, that mirrors what he has said in the press conference. Okay, had to put on my best poker face for that last one. Woo! It's good to hear the first point, that the Texans, that people aren't looking at the Texans like the plague anymore. Right? The first two head coach searches did not go too well, David Culley the first time. Those candidates that we were interviewing that first time were not great. I remember the last search started off with Hines Ward and Joe Lombardi and eventually Josh McCown, and no one wanted the job, really. Except for Gannon, but then $100 if you read it. Ooh, Pat, 50-50. All right. DeMeco Ryans. Make a burner postcode. DeMeco Ryans. Results speak for themselves, man. The results speak for themselves. I mean, he has engineered and orchestrated a top 5, top 3, arguably top 1 defense the past 2 years with the 49ers. I think he would command, out of all these guys that we've talked about and everyone on this list except for maybe Sean Payton, he would command the most respect out of the players. 100%. DeMeco, like, we know him, man. We know the type of leader, the type of man that DeMeco is. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that he would be a very good head coach. I have no doubt in my mind because of how he's a leader of men, right? So I love that about him. And then you have the thought that, because he's from San Francisco, he's learned under Kyle Shanahan, he would maybe want to take a Kyle Shanahan style offensive coordinator with him, which would, maybe potentially ease some of the concerns that you have with hiring a defensive head coach and them ignoring or at least not maximizing the offensive side of the ball. So there is that possibility, but it's not as guaranteed in my opinion. Who knows? What if he hates the Shanahan system? We don't know, right? So that's just not a guarantee. And this is another good point. This is going to lead exactly into my kind of negative about DeMeco Ryans. I think really the main thing that you can nitpick with him. 49ers had a top defense under Robert Saleh too. DeMeco hasn't drastically changed their scheme. They still roughly play the same quarter style defense. And that defense is the most talented defense in the league. Not only that, but it's the unique talents that they have that are very difficult to find. It's very difficult to find a Nick Bosa. Now, funny enough, I think Will Anderson actually compares pretty well to the Bosa brothers, but we kind of need to use number 2 on a quarterback, if you ask me. Moving on from Nick Bosa, sure, you can find a premium edge rusher. The key to that Niners defense working and them being able to play the way that they do is Fred Warner, linebacker. He is the key. He is the best linebacker in the league. He's a top 5 defender in the league, in my opinion. And there's not many linebackers like him that can cover the way that he covers. So I think for as great as DeMeco Ryans is and the results that he has gotten, he's had a lot of talent to work with. A lot of talent that he's not going to have on the Texans, at least right away. So I wouldn't expect DeMeco Ryans to come in here and turn this defense around into, a top 10 unit in the first year. I wouldn't. Unless we can find him a Fred Warner and a Nick Bosa, I don't know. I haven't seen him be able to, adjust to different personnel. Peace out, Pat. Appreciate you for coming through, my boy. And so that's kind of where I'm hesitating a little bit with DeMeco Ryans. Because if you look at the Texans defense, our positional strengths aren't really what the positional strengths of the Niners defense are. We don't have that elite edge rusher. We don't have that elite middle linebacker. We have a very good young safety in Jalen Petrie, a promising young corner in Derek Stingley, promising weak side linebacker in Christian Harris. That's kind of it. The 49ers' strength of their defense is the front seven. Our strength of our defense, you could say, is the back seven. I mean, Charles Omenihu, an impactful player. That's enough for me. Absolutely. Shout out to my boy John. Shout out to my boy John Crumpler. Yeah, no, I like him. I think that's actually a fair assessment, John. I think their D-line coach, Chris Kosarek, gets a lot of credit for that as well. And he's a potential Ben Johnson connection. So maybe he's gone. So he's all right. Pulling up the text. So yeah, D'Amico Ryans, I think that's really the only kind of hole that you can poke in to his head coach, resume. Other than that, dude, I'm very convinced that he can install the culture that this Texans organization desperately needs. And you talk about just the story that it'll be for him coming back to his team, man. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Let's get into Gannon now. Balin. Let's get into Gannon because Balin says he may be crazy to prefer Gannon over Miko. I know Gannon can put together a great staff, and if we're going to say both Gannon and Miko have benefited greatly from talent, I think I'd definitely prefer the staff. Yeah, that's the other thing, man. That's the other thing. If you compare apples to apples, that Eagles defense is very talented, just like the Niners defense. They have the best defensive line in the league. Not many teams can go as deep as they do. Solid linebackers, really good cornerback duo, probably the best cornerback duo in the league as well. So yeah, Gannon has had a lot of talent to work with. And Gannon is a guy that I've kind of gone back and forth on a good bit. Last year, I talked myself into him because he was definitely, the best of the group, better than Josh McCown. And I still think he's fine. I wouldn't hate us hiring him. But after we interviewed D'Amico Ryans, Ben Johnson, Shane Steichen, Mike Kafka, Sean Payton, Thomas Brown, Jonathan Gannon's not looking too hot no more, in my opinion. I think it would start with the fact that a lot of Eagles media and a lot of Eagles fans don't like Jonathan Gannon, don't have good things to say about him, don't have good things to say about how he calls his defense. He has a lot of talent, and yet he calls a very conservative, zone-heavy, off-coverage defense. Now, they'll switch up their fronts. They'll switch up their personnel and their coverage calls. But for the most part, it's a lot of conservative zone. Now, is that because of how Gannon views his personnel? Is it because he knows he has a really good secondary and a really good pass rush, so he should just let his pass rush get after it? Or is that just kind of more of a hard-headed style of a coach that he is? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. I'm just kind of throwing out thoughts. I think we like Gannon versus the interviews last year. That's the only reason people think we like him. This year is totally different. Yeah, I would generally agree with that, Jerry. I would generally agree with that. I wouldn't put him in the top tier of candidates. I also wouldn't put him in tier 2, but I would put him in tier 3. All right, I would put him in tier 3, and let me go over some of the positives of him. I was reading an article that I wrote last year that I was this close to publishing because I was so certain because of what I had been told that Gannon was going to be the guy. So I had written up a whole 2,000-word article about his pros, his cons, the staff he could bring, yada, yada, yada. And when I was reading the pros, people around what I realized is that people in the NFL circles are a lot higher on this guy than people in the public media and the public eye and fans. He's really highly respected around the NFL. He had 2 head coach interviews last year. Apparently, he did really well on both of them and in the Texans one. He's kind of like a Brandon Staley, where he's this really smart dude who has kind of a calm demeanor and is a really just like analytical mind, who's a good teacher and kind of just like this defensive wizard, right? So that's kind of the book on him. And the thing that I forgot, honestly, this year, Joey, perfect timing. He has a scouting background. And that is one of the biggest benefits on Jonathan Gannon's resume because no one else has that. Out of all the candidates we've interviewed, no one else has that. And it's important for a head coach position, especially one that is going to have say in personnel decisions, who to play, how to tailor his scheme to these players. It's important for him to have that talent evaluation background so that we don't end up getting Rex Burkhead snaps over Dare Ogunbowale, right? As simple as that. Just being able to evaluate the talent that's not on the roster, but also on the roster at the same time. Exactly, John. Exactly. We were writing our Gannon previews together in Mobile. I remember that, man. The Senior Bowl. There was so much confidence there. He had the job. You know who I was talking to, John? You remember who I was talking to? Who told me what was going on? So I had literally, we were so ready, man. All I had to do was hit publish. All I had to do was hit publish, and it would have been up. But the next day, literally the very next day, it was reported that he wouldn't be the guy, and they went with Lovie. That was craziness. That was craziness. But yeah, Jonathan Gannon. So this is where I land with Jonathan Gannon. He's kind of a mid-tier candidate for me, tier 3. There's good, there's bad with him. I wouldn't be like, this, like, we are Gannon. I would kind of understand it. Apparently the McNairs are very high on him. He does feel like a good philosophical fit with Nick in the sense that they're kind of the same personalities. The very intriguing thing about Gannon that has come out to light, not this past cycle, but now this current cycle, is the staff that he could build. Again, Aaron Wilson, one of the best in the biz, reported that he could potentially bring Frank Reich, Colts ex-head coach, Brian Johnson, Eagles quarterback coach, who is a high riser and is thought of as in a couple of years he's going to be a head coach. And the big fish that I'm really interested in is Mike Zimmer as his DC. And I love that because when you think about that type of staff, it gives you veteran experience in Frank Reich and Mike Zimmer. 2 guys, not one, 2 guys who have been head coaches before. And that will, I think, we hear the term when you're evaluating draft prospects, we hear the term like pro ready a lot, right? How quickly can they make the transition to the NFL? Having Mike Zimmer and Frank Reich on your staff will make Jonathan Gannon a more pro-ready head coach as a first-year head coach, right? Being able to lean on those veterans and they can help him with their program, right? Not only that, but having a different mind on the defense where Mike Zimmer can mainly handle that defense, that eliminates the concerns that Eagles fans and Eagles media talk about with Jonathan Gannon's soft zones. Maybe not eliminate it, but it mitigates it, right? If Gannon is more willing to take more of a CEO role as a head coach, I can buy into him a lot more than if he's going to be, I'm going to run the defense my way and you focus on the offense and I'm going to focus on the defense and blah, 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 right? If he becomes more of a CEO style, because I think at the end of the day, that is kind of what we see has a lot of success nowadays. You look at guys like another defensive guy like Sean McDermott, for example, in the Bills, right? McDermott is very good about, when he had Brian Dable, let Brian Dable do his thing. Now, Ken Dorsey, let Ken Dorsey do his thing. And he has Leslie Frazier doing the defense. Even though McDermott's a defensive guy, I'm going to let Leslie Frazier do his thing because he's good at his damn job, and I'm going to empower him. And that is the other thing that is interesting about Jonathan Gannon. Last year, I talked to a former Eagles scout who has been around Jonathan Gannon and obviously knows him pretty well. And he also compared him to Brandon Staley and said that he's big on assistant empowerment and that he would be kind of more of a CEO coach than a dictator type of style. So there's good, there's bad with Gannon. I could get into it. Again, not my top tier guy, but I don't think there's really, we don't need to be up in arms if he ends up getting hired as the head coach. All right. Let's talk about, put in the chat, out of the guys that we have not talked about, out of the head coach interview candidates that we have not talked about, put it in the chat. One last guy, if I can only talk about one guy before we move on to the draft, who do you want me to talk about? Ezra Evero, Sean Payton, or Thomas Brown? I believe those are the only ones I haven't done yet. I believe I've done everyone else. Yes, I have. Okay, cool. Evero, Peyton, or Thomas Brown. We're not going to do outside candidates. We're not going to do outside candidates until they get requested the interview. You got one for Peyton. You got two for Peyton. One for Thomas. And then we'll get into the draft. A little bit of a draft talk. Joey, one vote. One vote for person, Joey. Okay. Oh, y'all rein it in now. Let's go. Okay, we got a lot of Peyton. It's between Peyton and Thomas. And no Ezra Evero love. That's fine. I didn't really want to talk about him anyways. Peyton. Okay. Well, I do want to. I like Thomas Brown. I think he. Okay, I lied, y'all. I'll quickly touch on Thomas Brown, but this is it. Thomas Brown, low-key gives me Mike Tomlin vibes in the way that he connects with players and is a leader. And I don't think this is his year right now, but I think next year, I think he might be the truth. I think he might be the truth. So I like that they interviewed him. I didn't think, even though it was not anyone else had interviewed, I like him. He's had success wherever he's gone. Running back coach in Wisconsin with Melvin Gordon, running back coach at Georgia with Nick Chubb, with the Rams with Cam Akers, and then winning a Super Bowl. And now not only is he elevated from the running back coach, now he's a tight end coach and assistant head coach too. So he's a leader of men. He is that type of coach. So I like that. He would probably be in, I don't know, I want to say either tier 2 or tier 3, either low-end tier 2 or high-end tier 3. Anyways, Sean Payton now. Actually, no, we got to get to my boy Trey, the NFL Hub. Check out his Insta. Does some clean graphic work. My boy. Talk Sean Payton. Feel like a lot of people are undervaluing him in our fan base. Appreciate the $5, my boy. Thank you very much. Alrighty. I think I made a banner for this dude. There we go. Sean Payton. There's a lot of layers to this. There's a lot of layers to peel back with Sean Payton. In a vacuum, of course, Sean Payton is the best candidate on this list. Of course. His winning records, his experience, Super Bowl we're talking about, best of the best. He blows everyone else's resume out the water in terms of pure success in the NFL. He's been here before. We know he can do this, right? And especially when you talk about potentially drafting a guy like Bryce Young, potentially drafting a 5'9", 190-pound soaking wet quarterback, look at what he's done with Drew Brees, right? So he knows how to maximize a smaller quarterback who may not be the most athletically gifted Josh Allen, Justin Herbert type of dude, but he's smart, he's poised, he's clutch. That's Drew Brees. That's Bryce Young, right? Look at what the Saints did. Look at the formula they did. They consistently invested in the O-line to protect Drew Brees. That's what the Texans have to do if they draft Bryce Young. So we know he has the winning resume. We know he can do it with potentially the best quarterback in the class. Yeah, I'm going to put that out there right now. We'll get into that in a second. Best quarterback in the class. And we know that the players are going to respect him. That is the other thing. You bring in Sean Payton, that is the big fish. That is the big culture change that the Texans need, not only to get their current players to buy in, but to attract free agents. Players are going to want to play for Sean Payton. He is that big of a name. He really is. So in a vacuum, Sean Payton brings a lot to the table. A lot. We talking cake. We talking cake because Sean Payton is sweet. But you have a little bit of too much cake, you're upset. And that brings me to my next point. You have to pay for Sean Payton. He ain't coming free like every other head coach candidate on this list. right? And if you pay a little bit too much for Sean Payton, I'm going to be upset, right? And the Saints have been asking for a first-round pick plus. This is not some measly fourth-round pick, third-round pick. If that was the price, I would be talking about this completely differently. But it's not the rumored price. And while I'm not sure that he will actually end up getting a first, I don't even want to give up a second because our second-round pick this year is basically a first-round pick. It's at 33, right? And next year, we're probably going to have a high second-round pick too. Who knows what's going to happen with the Browns pick? So I would be willing to give up a third and like a fifth, and like a sixth, and like a seventh, sure. But I am not giving up a premium draft pick when the roster that we have looks the way it does. If we were already, a 6 to 7 to 8 win team, if we were already kind of, just a couple pieces away from the playoffs and, we had this surplus of picks and that coach would really put us over the edge, sure. But that's not our situation. All right. We are basically starting from ground zero in terms of this roster. We need every one of those premium picks from the Deshaun Watson trade. We need to hit on them. So I would not be happy giving up a first-round pick plus for Sean Payton, as good as his resume is, as good as he is in a vacuum. So that's kind of where I stand with Sean Payton. It's weird because in a vacuum, he would be a tier 1 candidate. But when you account for the price in our situation, he becomes more of a tier 2, tier 3 type of candidate, in my opinion. And the other conversation, the other part of this is that this isn't the same as in years past where nobody really wants this job and it's a less enticing job, the Houston Texans, right? It's not like we're interviewing Joe Lombardi and Hines Ward and Josh McCown right now. We're interviewing the top dogs. We're interviewing the Ben Johnsons of the world, the Shane Steichens, the D'Amico Ryans, hopefully. Fingers crossed. The Ezra Everos, right? All the guys that everyone is lining up to hire. So if we were in a different situation where if we were picking between Josh McCown and paying a first-round pick for Sean Payton, then you got my attention. But it is a strong year for the candidates that we are, looking to get in bed with, essentially. Is Sean Payton an A-plus coach? Absolutely. Are there other coaches on the market that we are interviewing right now that are also maybe A-minus, B-plus, A coaches? Absolutely. So I think the drop-off, the marginal difference, I guess, between Sean Payton and what a Ben Johnson could be, what a Shane Steichen could be, what a Mike Kafka could be, I don't think that's worth the first-round pick plus for a team like the Texans that so badly needs to use every single premium pick they can to improve this roster. That's my take on the situation of Sean Payton. Alrighty. I think that does it for the I want a Mike McDaniel clone. I do too, Chris. I want a Mike McDaniel clone. I want a Kevin O'Connell clone. And that's why my top tier involves Ben Johnson and Shane Steichen. And that's why also Mike Kafka, despite having such little experience in the NFL, he's in tier 2 for me, high up in tier 2 for me. I want that young offensive guru. To go coach up Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Yes, sir. It's draft talk time. We're an hour 15 deep. I appreciate everyone who's been here. Whether you came since minute 1, whether you just came right now, I appreciate y'all's support. Let's get into the draft. And we will be doing a mock draft. We will maybe be doing a couple because there's a lot of situations that the Texans could go with this. And I want to preface this by saying that I don't think there is just one path that, oh, this is the only path that the Texans can take. If they don't take this path in the draft, they are going to fail the rebuild. No, that's not the case. This one pick should not make or break the rebuild. If it does, Nick Caserio ain't that dude, right? He ain't that dude. That being said, at 2, we better get this right. We better get this right. And I think there's a lot of paths we can go. I think I'm glad that we are still, even though we're not picking 1, I'm glad that we're still in the top 4 because I think this draft specifically, there are the top tier of players, there's 4 of them, right? In no particular order, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson Jr., and Jalen Carter. That is your top 4. You want to pick one of those top 4 guys because they're all around the same level of talent and projectability to the NFL, right? Those are your blue chip guys in the class. After that, it drops off. After that, there's a little bit of a drop off. No, Will Levis is not involved in that conversation. Unquiet 8. We'll talk a little bit, Will Levis, though. Talk a little bit. So the question now becomes, do the Texans stay at 2 or do they trade up to 1? Do they trade down? I don't think you trade down. Again, I want to stay in the top 4 and get one of those top 4 guys. Ideally, in my perfect world, I think we go quarterback because it is the most important position on the team. It is the player that has the ball in their hands the most. And it is shown to be the most valuable position in terms of team success. Out of all the other positions on the team, quarterback is, at the end of the day, still the most valuable. Even though a lot of people have Jalen Carter or Will Anderson as their top prospect in the draft, think about it. Think about the best. Let's say Jalen Carter or Will Anderson become the best at their position. Let's say Jalen Carter becomes Aaron Donald. He's not becoming Aaron Donald, by the way. He is not similar to Aaron Donald. He's more of a Jeffrey Simmons, more of a Deron Payne, more of a Quinnen Williams type of guy. This is honestly, those two, Jalen Carter and Nick Bosa, are very similar to Quinnen Williams and Nick Bosa of that year, right? So let's say Jalen Carter becomes a Quinnen Williams. Let's say Will Anderson becomes a Nick Bosa. Look at the Jets and the Niners. They're still in quarterback hell. The Jets would have made the playoffs with a little bit better of a quarterback. That completely held back that team. No matter how good that defense was, they're still held back by that. Thank God the Niners got Brock Purdy. Thank God. But what has been their problem all these years? Despite an elite defense, it has always been the quarterback. So I just think, in my opinion, let's say all these 4 players hit their ceilings. Let's say Jalen Carter becomes the best version of Jalen Carter he can be. Let's say Will Anderson does too. Let's say Bryce Young and CJ Stroud do too. Bryce's ceiling is way more valuable than Jalen Carter's ceiling. CJ Stroud's ceiling is way more valuable than Jalen Carter or Will Anderson's ceiling. So that's why I think you need to go quarterback. Again, I won't be mad if they end up going with one of Anderson or Carter, especially if we end up hiring a defensive head coach like D'Amico Ryans or Jonathan Gannon. But my preferred path is go hire an offensive head coach, go get your quarterback, and then at 12, go get him his wide receiver 1. If it's Bryce Young, I like Jordan Addison. If it's CJ Stroud, I like JSN. Now put it in the chat. We're going to get into this debate now. Who do you have as quarterback 1 this year? Because it is divided. It is not as set in stone as it has in years past. So put it in the chat. I want to see what you guys are talking about, where your opinions land. Bryce or Stroud? Bryce or Mr. Coleridge Bernard Stroud? Yes, that is in fact his real name. His not real name, I shouldn't say that. His name given to him at birth. That's where it comes from. Coleridge Bernard. All right, Bryce, CJ, Bryce, CJ, Burrow, Bryce, AR-15, if given the right staff. I don't hate that as well. Bryce and Mechie, man, it will be back. What a story that would be. Bro, we have to hype up John Mechie for comeback player of the year. We have to, man. We have to. CJ, Bryce, I mean, it's CJ with his government name. Absolutely. The 5'9" quarterback. I love it, man. I love it. Okay. It is still pretty split in the chat, but I would guesstimate and say it's 60-40 Bryce CJ with you guys. Coleridge Bernard sounds like a jazz musician. It really does, man. It really does. Okay, here's what I should say. I do have Bryce Young as quarterback 1. All right. I do have Bryce as quarterback 1. And I will preface this by saying is just because I have Bryce as quarterback 1 doesn't mean I think CJ Stroud is going to be a bust. Doesn't mean I think he's going to be a bad player. Doesn't mean I won't be happy if we draft him at 2, because I understand the advantages of CJ Stroud over Bryce Young, right? We talk about Bryce Young, we have to start with the size, right? We obviously have to. He's listed at 6 foot, like 195 or something like that on the Alabama roster. He's not going to be 6 foot, all right? He's not going to be 6 foot. I will not be surprised if he measures in at the combine at 5'9" and 3/8 or some shit. Why do they measure it in 3/8? I don't know. Someone can tell me. So, of course, his size is outlier size. Of course, there's only been, 3 quarterbacks in NFL history that have started X amount of games at his size and his weight. At 5'9", probably 195 soaking wet, right? Now, for any other player, I think this would be such a concern that he's borderline undraftable. Look at Stetson Bennett, right? Stetson Bennett's a small dude too, and people don't like him. 5'9" is crazy, Vari. 5'9" is crazy. I could see him being as low as 5'9". Honestly, maybe it's 5'10", because I was watching a documentary on him, and he was 5'9" in high school. So you would like to think he's grown a little bit since then. Some people don't, but you would think he has grown a little bit at least since then. You would think. But I think the lowest that we should think about is 5'9", right? And that being said, so of course the concerns that come with that, there's twofold, right? There's the in-game concerns of how your height impacts the player's performance, especially a quarterback. And then there's the out of the game kind of like injury concerns. And for me, the injury concerns far outweigh the in-game concerns. Honestly, the in-game concerns, I don't care, and I'll explain my case. But of course, the injury concerns are going to be something that are factored in. You can't ignore them. It is what it is, because Bryce, no matter what he does, he's never going to grow much taller. And sure, he can put on some weight, and he will at the next level. But it's a tough point to start at, right? It's a tough point to start at. So you have to weigh those concerns, because it's not a fixable, it's a weakness on his scouting report, and it's not something that he can really exponentially fix, right? You talk about other weaknesses, accuracy, pocket presence, decision-making, whatever. Traits like that, for the most part, they're fixable, they're improvable, but height and size is not really. So if Bryce Young was 6 foot, 200, he would have been the guaranteed number 1 pick for the past 2 years. He would have been seen on the Trevor Lawrence level, in my opinion, as good as Trevor Lawrence as a prospect, if not better, if he was just 6 foot, 200, right? That's how good of a prospect Bryce Young is. That's how good he is in game. He has there is no other hole in his game. You look at his weaknesses on his scouting report, there is no other big time hole. He has the mental traits, right? He's a great decision maker. He's amazing poise and composure in the pocket. He deals with pressure better than any quarterback in this draft, in last draft, maybe since the draft before too. I have not scouted a better quarterback at dealing with pressure than I have Bryce Young. That says a lot. So he has the mental traits down. He has the accuracy, the ball placement. He understands how to run a pro offense, right? Bill O'Brien was his offensive coordinator. We know how difficult a Bill O'Brien offense can be to execute as a quarterback. It can take some time. But as a first-year starter, as a redshirt sophomore and back in 2021, Bryce Young won the damn Heisman. He balled out. He had the best statistical season of any Alabama quarterback ever. Better than Tua, better than Mac Jones, better than Jalen Hurts. Right? He has that it factor, as Joey says. He has that unteachable gene of being clutch. You go back and watch his tape, fourth quarters, overtime, he has that it factor that puts fear in defenses, that they're like, oh, we can't give Bryce Young 30 seconds. We can't give him 30 seconds or he's going to drive down the field and set his team up to score. Young is him. Young is him, right? He's ice young. I call him Ice Young for a reason because he's got ice in his veins. He has proven time and time again he is clutch. You can't teach that. For as much as you can't make him bigger, you also can't teach guys to be clutch like him, right? If he was 6 foot, 200, generational quarterback prospect, generational. And we've seen two versions of Bryce Young now, right? We've seen 2021 Bryce Young, where he had Jamison Williams, he had John Mechie, he had Evan Neal, right? He had talent around him. And what happens when you give Bryce Young talent? He's going to lead you to the national championship game. He's going to win the damn Heisman Trophy, all right? That's what happens when you surround him with talent. But as I say a lot, I want my quarterback to be a guy who not only is good when you have talent around him, but is also good when you don't have talent around him and he can elevate guys around him. And that's what we saw in 2022. That's what we saw with the second version of Bryce Young, where he didn't have Jamison Williams. He didn't have John Mechie. He didn't have Evan Neal. That O-line, there is one draftable player on this O-line this year in 2022. There are 0 draftable wide receivers on this Alabama roster. Sure, some of them are 4 stars, but none of them are draftable. None of them are that good. He certainly doesn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. He certainly doesn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba. Right? So Bryce has now this year proven that he can do it with less talent around him. And sure, he had a little bit of a drop-off in stats, but if you add up his 2-year stats between 2021 and 2022, and you compare those 2-year stats to CJ Stroud and to Will Levis, his stats in terms of pure volume are still better than Stroud and Levis. He has still passed for more yards, he has still thrown more touchdowns, and he has still thrown less interceptions. Now, you guys know me, I'm not box score guy. I'm a film guy. And you watch his film, and again, you still see the same Bryce Young that you see in 2021. You see a guy who consistently makes up for his teammates' mistakes, consistently has to deal with pressure given up by the offensive line, consistently deals with drops on key third downs from his wide receivers. He dealt with 22 drops this year. 22. It's a lot. He had an 84% adjusted completion percentage this year. 84%. Levis was at 74. Stroud was at 81. Adjusted completion percentage, if you don't know, it adjusts for drops, throwaways, etc. Right? So that's a good statistical gauge of his accuracy. And again, I'm not a big stats guy. You watch the film. This dude is super accurate. That's where the Drew Brees comparisons come from. That's where the Joe Burrow comparisons come from. And I think those are great comparisons for him. Drew Brees, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson. Are any of those guys the biggest guys? No. Do any of them have elite arms? No. They're all He's more Breeze than Burrow than Watson, to be honest. But he has a bit of Watson's like playmaking ability outside of the pocket. But what Bryce does is he is both a really good pocket passer and a really good creator outside of the pocket, outside of structure. When everything's perfect, he's got talent around him, like in 2021, boom, he's amazing. In 2022, when things aren't perfect around him and he has to create more for himself and elevate others, he's really good too. Right? So he's both things. He's both of those styles of quarterback. And that's why he's higher than CJ Stroud for me, because Stroud, we know he's great, perfect in structure with talent around him. We know he's great. He's polished, all that. When pressure comes, he's a little bit more inconsistent. Now, we've seen some good flashes. We've seen some bad flashes. The Georgia game was as good as you could ask out of him against elite competition on a big stage without his number one wide receiver, without his number two wide receiver too. He balled out. You have to give it to him. Great. His best game of his career. Best game of CJ Stroud's career versus Georgia. So that reason alone has given me some more optimism in Stroud, has kept him at QB2 for me, because there was a time where I thought Anthony Richardson might be QB2. But my point here is essentially, we'll get to CJ Stroud in a second, sorry. My point here is Bryce Young is QB1. I think he has so much that you just can't coach in terms of his clutch gene, in terms of his composure, in terms of his ability to create when shit hits the fan. And I'm very bought in him as a leader in terms of his, personality, in terms of the head that he has on his shoulders. He seems like, I watched a documentary of him like growing up, and he seems like a very good dude who has a good head on his shoulders and can lead a franchise, right? And at the end of the day, what the Texans need to draft is a damn good and talented quarterback, but just as importantly is they need to draft the face of their franchise. They need to draft the guy that everyone's going to look up to, that everyone's going to rally behind, that everyone is going to want to play for as well. And that's Bryce Young, right? We look at our other premium picks, Derek Stingley. Derek Stingley's more of that quiet killer, right? He going to get the work done. But Bryce Young is a leader. And I think he should be the guy. I think he should be the first quarterback off the board, even despite his size, right? Even despite his size. And the crazy thing about the size narrative with Bryce is people act like he was 6'4", 6'5", and then shrunk this year or something. Like, no. Bryce Young has always been the smallest guy on the field through high school, through college, and now in the NFL. And of course, it'll matter more in the NFL. But this has always been the story of Bryce Young. He's always overcame the odds. He's always been the smallest guy on the field, and it has never mattered. That has always been on his scouting report, and it has still never held him back to this point. And it's not like Bryce has a big injury history or anything. It's not like it affects him on the field. You talk about other quarterbacks, smaller quarterbacks, and how it may affect them. Russell Wilson is a prime example. Russell Wilson doesn't throw to the middle of the field. There's stats that prove it. There's film that proves it. He doesn't throw to the middle of the field. Why? Because he can't see well over his offensive line. He doesn't have the vision for it. So he targets the sidelines a lot more than he does the middle of the field. So you would think, oh, maybe that's going to be a flaw for Bryce Young too. But you watch his tape, you pull up the dot charts where he throws his passes, he targets the middle of the field even more than he targets the sideline. So that's not an issue for him. So I really don't think his size impacts Bryce Young within the game. But I do concede that, of course, it's going to increase your risk of injury. But you look across the league this year, quarterbacks are getting injured no matter the size they are. Josh Allen dealt with an injury. He's as big as a quarterback as they gets, right? So you have big guys like him, Matthew Stafford as well. Who else dealt with injury? I literally tweeted this out the other day too. I had a list. Jalen Hurts got injured for a couple weeks too. Like, injuries are bound to happen. Of course, the smaller you are, the higher chance there is, but injuries happen. It's part of the game. Lamar, thank you, George. Jorge, George, I don't know. There you go. These bigger built quarterbacks, guys that are 230, 220, 240, it doesn't matter. They're still getting injured. So you never know, man. You never know. But that's my spiel on Bryce. That's why I still think he's quarterback one. Now, I want to exactly, Balin. It's a freak non-contact injury where he was trying to slide. It's an ACL. Like it's not all injuries are equal. You can't compare them all, you know. But anyways, for as high as I am on Bryce, as much as I love him, as much as I believe he is quarterback one, again, that is not to say that I will be upset if we go with CJ Stroud, even if Bryce is on the board. I will be like, okay, I would have preferred Bryce, but like I will understand. I will understand if Nick and co deem the injury concerns to be too much. I think Bryce Young has a higher ceiling than CJ Stroud because of the genes that you just can't teach. Like I said, the clutch factor in Ice Young, you just can't teach it. But at the end of the day, does maybe CJ Stroud have a higher, is he more of a safer prospect in terms of injuries? Maybe you can. I can understand that argument, right? And CJ Stroud, to me, everything that I said about about Bryce being, a polished pocket passer in terms of reading the full field, getting through your progressions, being super accurate, ball placement, having the arm to make all the NFL throws, like. Okay, that's fair. That's totally fair, man. That's totally fair. I get it, man. I get it. You gonna get these hands. I get you. But I still think CJ Stroud can be, a top 12 quarterback, maybe top 10, depending on, how much talent you can surround him with, because he is so good at reading defenses. He reads defenses so fast. It is actually crazy. He knows how to deal with coverage disguises, with post-snap rotations, right? And people will knock the Ohio State offense and are like, oh, it's not a pro-style offense or whatever. Like, he's reading the full field. He's reading pro concepts. And nowadays, a lot of college offenses are pro offenses anyways. So, yes, he's had a lot of talent to deal with or to work with. And that plays a factor in him being lower than Bryce Young with me. And the other factor is he's less consistent at defeating pressure. There's a lot more reps on CJ Stroud's tape where when pressure hits him, he's fading away when he's throwing the ball. He's throwing off his back foot. He gets a little jittery with his feet in the pocket. Sometimes, like, he's not the same athlete that Bryce Young is, so he's not always going to be able to evade defenders and try and get out of the pocket. But that being said, it's hard to ignore the Georgia tape. It's hard to ignore it in the biggest game of the season and to show that improvement on your one flaw, because that really, at the end of the day, is his one flaw, is handling pressure consistently, right? And so he's shown the flashes now against an elite level defense in Georgia. He's shown it now. And so that gave me more reason to buy in that, hey, CJ Stroud can use his legs more. Hey, CJ Stroud can improve under pressure. And if he can do that, like, there's not really a hole in his game. There's not really something that you can pinpoint and be like, oh, we can take advantage of this, right? And that's how we slow down CJ Stroud, right? There's not really anything else. So I like CJ Stroud too. I think they are comfortably the top tier of the quarterback class this year. Anthony Richardson's pretty damn close, but he's more of a project, a little bit more raw, a little less safe. CJ Stroud, now that we've had that conversation, Stroud versus Young, again, I think going back to what do we do at 12? I think we need to do our best to support these quarterbacks, give them all the resources and all the talent that they need to succeed. And so I think wide receiver is a super, super valuable position nowadays. I think it needs to be seen as a premier position, similar to how quarterback, edge rusher, left tackle is. I think wide receiver is up there now. It's up there. So if we go Bryce Young, Jordan Addison it is, or Quentin Johnston it is. Now, if we get into the wide receiver discussion, I do have Jordan Addison over Quentin Johnston as wide receiver 1 because I think he's the most consistent and polished wide receiver in this class. He's the best route runner, and he's the most well-rounded game. Again, he's kind of the Bryce Young of wide receivers. He's kind of the Bryce Young of wide receivers that the only hole really that you can poke is his size, right? He's smaller. He's about like 5'11", 6 foot, 195. Jordan Addison is, I'm saying. But he reminds me a lot of Stephon Diggs, who was another smaller, kind of skinny wide receiver, a lot of Amari Cooper, and a lot of Justin Jefferson, right? These are all guys that are elite route runners, are damn good athletes. Maybe they're not all like 4-3 burners, but they create big plays because they get open at will. And I think what a quarterback's best friend is a wide receiver he knows he can trust to get open at will. And that's Jordan Addison. That's a big difference between him and Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston, he's more boomer bust to me. And I don't think we can afford to bust on this pick. He's more boomer bust to me because you look at guys with his profile, at his size, but then just the kind of mediocre production that he has, and there's not a good history of success in the league. There's not. The thing about Quentin Johnston is he'll dominate you one rep, and he'll absolutely disappear another rep, right? And why is that? It's because he's a little bit less of a consistent and polished route runner. It's also because he body catches a lot. You watch his highlight tapes, and sure, he'll have a lot of catches where he bodies defenders, he mosses defenders. But a lot of catches also, he's body catching. And it's not just simple slants or screens or whatnot. There's jump balls too where he's body catching. He's trying to cradle it. Where you just need to use your size, dude. You're 6'4", 215. Like, just use it, man, consistently. So, Jordan Addison, polished, consistent, wide receiver 1 for me. He's produced in 2 different systems at 2 different schools with 2 different quarterbacks. Pitt with Kenny Pickett, USC with Caleb Williams. He can play in the slot. He can play outside. He does it all, man. He wins at all 3 levels, and he's really good at yak too. And he's really good at yak. Now, the same conversation I have with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and being fine with either of them, but still preferring Bryce is the same kind of thing I have with Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston. At the end of the day, you take either one of those wide receivers, I will be happy. I will buy into it because they both have great ceilings, right? But I will prefer Jordan Addison. So if we go Bryce, I would love to go Jordan Addison at 12. If we go Stroud, I would still love Jordan Addison. I would still really like Quentin Johnston, but I think it would make a lot of sense to go JSN, man. I think it would make a lot of sense to get a wide receiver that he's already comfortable with, who is a really good prospect in his own right. If JSN had a healthy year, we'd be talking about him as a top 5 pick. We'd be talking about him right outside of that top tier of 4 best players I said. It would be right after Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. It would be him, and it would be Bijan Robinson. Him and Bijan Robinson are the most talented offensive weapons in this class, the non-quarterbacks, right? What JSN did at a young age, the way that he outproduced, he had better stats than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And look at Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson translate to the NFL. They translated, man. They really did. And JSN outproduced them both at a younger age. Right? I think that says a lot. He's kind of the Derek Stingley of this class. And it's kind of that risk reward you have to weigh is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to stay on the field? This entire year, he dealt with a lingering hamstring injury. He injured himself, I'm pretty sure, on the very first play of the season, if not at least very early in that first game. And he was injured for a while, and he came back, and he clearly wasn't himself. And so he didn't look like himself this year. You watch the 2021 tape, lights out. No one's guarding this dude, right? And so I feel you, Josh. Like, that's why I would have JSN wide receiver 1 if he didn't deal with this injury-riddled season. But man, I got PTSD from Stingley. I said it early in the draft season. This is why I don't really want Stingley. This is why I want Sauce over Stingley, because who knows with the injuries? And it was the same types of injuries with Stingley and JSN. It was soft tissue injuries. It was hamstrings. It wasn't just one fluke non-contact ACL injury that both of those guys dealt with. And you're like, oh, it's just a fluke, like whatever. Like, no, these are lingering injuries. The ones that you're like, oh, maybe I can play through this, but like you really shouldn't be. And they kind of stick with you. So it makes me very worried about JSN. And I would only be willing to take that risk if we took Stroud. And even then still, I would still prefer Addison. I still think that is the safer route to go. But I would understand, of course, because of the chemistry that that CJ showed. And the funny thing about, so I gave my player comp for Jordan Addison, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Justin Jefferson type of dudes. The one that I ended up writing down for JSN is Cooper Kupp. And stick with me here. What is Cooper Kupp and what is JSN? They are both slot first wide receivers that, sure, you can move them outside and they'll still be fine, but they are slot first wide receivers. They're both guys that aren't going to run a blazing 40. Book it. JSN is not going to run a 4.4, a low 4.4. He's not in the 4.3s, that's for sure. He'll maybe be high 4.4s, probably low to mid 4.5s. That's what I'm thinking. He's not a burner, right? But what is Cooper Kupp? He's a extremely smart and savvy route runner who is constantly open. He knows how to beat press man coverage. He knows how to beat zone coverage and find the holes in the defense. And he's a yak god. Despite being a slower wide receiver, despite maybe not being the biggest guy, right? JSN is not Quentin Johnston's size. He's not 6'4". He's 6'6'1", like 200. So he's not the biggest guy. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's a great route runner. He's a great yak threat. That's Cooper Kupp to me. And he's got really good hands too, dependable hands. And so when you watch JSN, man, like, that's what I see. I see a little bit of Cooper Kupp in him in terms of that play style, in terms of what his strengths are. He just knows where to be. Absolutely, Jerry. He knows where to be. He's really good at finding the holes in the defense. He's really good at reading leverage, attacking defenders' leverage to get open, to set up his routes. And he was really good at scramble drills too, which will be very important at the next level. So that's kind of my thought on the wide receiver class, on the quarterback class, man. Sure, Balin, I got you. Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt is a very interesting evaluation for me. And I was lower on him at first, and then I thought about it, and like, he's probably going to be wide receiver 3 or 4 for me, depending on how I end up thinking about JSN and his injury history. But the top 4 guys are definitely Addison, Quentin Johnston, JSN, and Hyatt. You can make an argument to move any of the bottom 3 guys there around, and I won't really argue with you. But Jalen Hyatt has that speed you just cannot teach. You just cannot teach. Really quickly, Quentin Johnston, there's some Julio Jones in his game, but then there's also some Martavis Bryant in his game, which is a big kind of range of players, right? You think about this tall but lanky guy who can win deep, who can win after the catch, but he isn't a very great route runner, and has inconsistent hands. That's kind of Martavis Bryant. But can he develop better hands? Julio Jones at Alabama, if you guys remember, like, he was body catching a lot. But of course, Julio Jones became Julio Jones. And so I think that's my thing with Quentin Johnston is the outcomes, the high-end outcome and the low-end outcome are way bigger than it is with Addison. And Addison, I gave Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, Justin Jefferson. Like, those are Those are the guys that he reminds me of, man. Those are the guys. But Jalen Hyatt, man, probably going to end up being wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 for me. Late first round grade, just because his speed is genuinely like Jameson Williams level. It is Jalen Waddle level. And he's not just a burner that just runs in straight lines. Like, he knows how to control his speed. He knows when to slow down, when to speed up. He's got great acceleration, good feel to get open in that sense. And I think, although he played in a very good, let me talk about other stuff first. So great athleticism, very good hands too. That's the other thing. People compare him a lot to Will Fuller, but he has way better hands than Will Fuller. He's not a basket catcher. He's a hands catcher, and he can go snag that outside of his frame. He has decent catch radius, and he'll go up and grab balls, right, outside of his frame. So Jalen Hyatt is a freaky athlete. He's an okay route runner. Like, he ran a very limited route tree. And now we'll get into kind of some of the negatives in his game. In the college offense that he was in Tennessee, it was the most like wide receiver quarterback friendly offense ever. Where if you watch their games, they are lining these guys up so wide to spread out the defense. Jalen Hyatt lined up on the damn near sideline for most of the time, and he's a slot wide receiver, right? He was lining up damn near on the sideline. That's how far out wide. Ran a very limited route tree where it's mainly goes, posts, and slants, and that's pretty much it, and some wheel routes. But you're not seeing like comeback routes, post corners, like dig routes, curl routes a lot of the time. There are some curl routes actually, and that's what actually he was kind of good at, because like his speed forces defenses to give him a cushion, and if you give him 10 yards, like, oh, he'll just take a little 5-yard curl route and call it a day, right? He won that award. He won the Blitnikoff Award for the top wide receiver in the nation, what Jordan Addison won last year at Pitt, by the way. And so at first, when I was thinking about Jalen Hyatt, I'm like, oh, this guy, like, he's not a super developed route runner. He came from a very college-friendly offense that may not really translate to the NFL. I don't know if I can trust him at the next level. Can I trust him to beat man coverage? Can he beat press man coverage? Because there was, I believe, 8 reps in total versus press coverage in his entire collegiate career. 8 reps. And so that was a big concern of mine at first. But then the more I thought about it, the more I think that there's been a lot of wide receivers recently who, didn't have a lot of experience beating press and still turned out fine. Right? Justin Jefferson is the one that comes to mind the most for me. And it was a reason why I was lower on Justin Jefferson, because people were like, oh, he doesn't have experience beating press. Oh, he mainly played in the slot, right? Oh, sometimes his routes are a little lackadaisical. But route running is something you can teach. If you have the athleticism, it's something you can learn. Justin Jefferson had that athleticism, and you're damn sure Jalen Hyatt has that athleticism. So that became a little bit less of a concern to me. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, you know what? This dude's speed is just that damn different that he's not going to be asked to beat press coverage often anyways. Teams aren't going to feel comfortable pressing him because it'll make it so much easier for him to beat you deep. So he's going to be dealing with off coverage most of the time anyways, and you're probably going to play him in the slot most of the time anyways too, because that's his game. That's what he's comfortable with. So when I factor that in, it kind of minimizes my concerns with his weaknesses, and I end up giving him a first-round grade. And I see some Will Fuller. I see some Jameson Williams in him. That game-breaking speed that really opens up an offense, and especially if we hire a offensive coordinator who is, one of these gurus coming up, rising in the league, a Ben Johnson, a Shane Steichen, a Mike Kafka, then I would have confidence that, hey, they are going to make the most out of Jalen Hyatt. They are going to play him to his strengths. They are going to understand how to get him free releases. You look at the Miami Dolphins, what Mike McDaniels has done with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and getting them free releases and not having to deal with press. Like, the blueprint is out there for Jalen Hyatt to have success in the NFL. There's no injury concerns with him. Not like with Will Fuller, right? So Jalen Hyatt would be a guy that I would really understand trading down from 12, trading down into the mid-20s, late 20s, targeting him, picking up another second-round pick. If you're going to go wide receiver anyways, we need a burner. You're right, Balin. We need a burner to open up the offense. We have Nico as your intermediate guy, your jump ball guy. We have Mechie as your slot guy who's going to get open no matter the coverage. We need either that true wide receiver one or that vertical burner. So I really like Jalen Hyatt too. I really, really do. Damn, we're going on 2 hours. A little recap from the coaching candidate ranking. Sorry I'm late, but from work and didn't catch it. Oh, I'll go McMac. Okay, let's tier them. Tier 1. 1A, 1B, Shane Steichen, Ben Johnson, and then you got D'Amico Ryans in that tier as well. Right? That's my tier 1. I really want a young offensive mind that's going to maximize our future quarterback. That's why I'm really high on Ben Johnson and Shane Steichen. I think they've had the best results. Ben Johnson's gotten a lot out of a mediocre roster in Detroit, and a very mediocre quarterback in Jared Goff. And Shane Steichen has had more experience than Ben Johnson. He might have had more talent to work with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, but also Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And so that shows that he's willing to adapt his scheme to a different type of quarterback. So I like that a lot. D'Amico Ryans, we know the book on him. We know why we like him. Next here, we got Mike Kafka, Giants offensive coordinator. I really like what he's done. He has done the most with the least in terms of that Giants roster. Way less talented than the Lions. Way worse offensive line than the Lions. Way less talented than the Eagles, obviously. And he still has them top 10 in a lot of categories, despite them pretty much only being able to run the ball. And defenses know that, right? So Mike Kafka's in tier 2. I think Ejiro Evero and John Gannon are tier 3 for me. Sean Payton's probably tier 2, tier 3. Thomas Brown, honestly, he's tier 2, tier 3 as well. He's right on that cusp. I really like Thomas Brown. I can see him being kind of a Mike Tomlin in the future, where just the best leader you can ask for, man. Like, he knows how to connect with his players. He's had success everywhere he's gone. And I think he would be more of a CEO type of coach because he's never called an offense, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's kind of my tiers. Let's do a mock draft. Let's do Pro Football Network mock draft simulator. Alrighty. Share that. Okay. We're going to do a little 7-round mock. Houston Texans. First one's going to be no trades, and then we'll do trades. First one's no trades. Let's get into it. And then I'm going to peace out. See, this is why I can't take these mock drafts seriously sometimes. You're telling me the Bears are going to go wide receiver number 1? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay. This is interesting. Move down 4 picks for a 2nd-round pick. Ooh, move down 10 picks for a 4th and another 1st. I might do that. Especially because Jordan Addison is off the board and Quentin Johnson is off the board. So the top 2 wide receivers are off the board. If we look at here on the right, like, I would probably go Tyree Wilson or Brian Branch. But, like, if I can just move down 10 picks, I'm still going to get a player in the similar tier of Tyree Wilson or Brian Branch. And I get an extra 1st-round pick. Oh, I said no trades this year. Fuck it. We're doing trades this year. Fuck it. Bye. See Brian Branch 2 picks away. Goddamn. Another 1st? Nah, I'll stay. All right, 22. Y'all can see, right? Y'all can see, right? Redo it. Use PFF. we'll do another one with PFF. All right. So, JSN's still there. JSN's still there. I don't know if I want to risk it since we didn't go Stroud. So I might go Joey Porter Jr. He would be the highest guy on my board. Or Felix Ndiki Uzoma. He would be the best edge on my board, and Joey Porter would be the best corner. If we get Joey Porter Jr. and Derek Stingley Jr., and we get a defensive coordinator who just calls man coverage all day, that would be damn good. I'm still thinking about JSN, though, because I really want to go offense with this pick and best support Bryce. I could trade down a little bit more and go take this guard here, Osiris Torrance out of Florida. He's the best guard in the class, in my opinion. Should I just go JSN? Should I just say screw it? No, we already have Mechie, man. He's already going to throw to Mechie in the slot. Like, we shouldn't. Maybe I go Skoronski and move him to guard. Yeah, I think we're going to do that. I think Skoronski at guard. Actually, you know what? Let's try and trade down a little bit. Let's try and trade down and get Torrance. Let's try and get another second-round pick out of this. Let's go to, like, the Eagles. Who else has an early second? No one. The Dolphins? Like, who can I... If I go to, like, the Bills... The Bengals, maybe? Let's try and move down to, like, the Bengals pick and pick up their second. That's not gonna be enough. We'll have to go to, like, the Chiefs or something. Trade with the Chiefs. 22 for 30 and 62. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we're gonna go to. Okay, let's just go Skoronski now. Oh, Felix went one pick away. That's annoying. Torrance is still there. Fuck, I should have just went somewhere else. That's fine. Okay. Rashee Rice is in that next tier of wide receivers that I really like. He reminds me a lot of DeAndre Hopkins. He's a little bit similar to Nico Collins, though, so I don't think I'm going to go there. I think I'm going to go center, the best center in the class, John Michael Schmitz. We got to protect Bryce Young now that we have him. We got to invest in that offensive line. So let's go get our center of the future done. Oh, perfect. I don't even have to think about it. Siaki Ika, I wanted him in the second round. He's here in the third. That's perfect. He's your starting defensive tackle for a decade. We need that run stuffer. Boom. Easy. Love it. Marvin Mims may be the move now to get a wide receiver because I do really want to get a wide receiver for Bryce. Just to recap, we went Bryce. We doubled up on the O-line. Our O-line is set up for years now, dude. Tunsil, left tackle. Green, right, left guard. John Michael Smith, center. Peter Skoronski, right guard. Titus Howard, right tackle. If you don't end up paying one of Titus or Tunsil, boom, move Skoronski to tackle. That's an elite offensive line. That's as good as it's going to get. Bryce Young is set up for success now. Boom. So I'm thinking I'm either going to go edge because we do need edge. That is a big need for us. Or I'm going to go wide receiver. So it's either going to be Marvin Mims or Lucas Van Ness for me. Do we just go overkill on offense now? I think we just go overkill on offense. Marvin Mims it is. And we pray, dang it, Lucas Van Ness is gone. Oh, sleeper running back. Watch some Israel Abanikanda. That's how you say his freaking name. Abanikanda. Crazy name. But he's really good. Okay. Zach Harrison, maybe an edge that we could think about. So I love Kenny McIntosh. Kenny McIntosh would be the perfect complement to Dameon Pierce. Do I have another fourth-round pick? I do. So I think I'm going to go Kenny McIntosh now and then try and get Derek Hall, one of these edge rushers. Where did he go later? Derek Hall. I think Derek Hall has starter traits. I think he's be a good sleeper. So I'm going to go Kenny McIntosh now, going all in on this offense. Damn, Derek Hall went 2 picks away. Okay. All in on this offense, Kenny McIntosh gets you a great receiving back who's also a good runner. So when you put him in, teams aren't going to know what's going to happen. They don't know. So now I really need an edge. I really need an edge or a corner. Ooh, I love Garrett Williams. But we have Steven Nelson for another year. I think we need to invest in the edge. KJ Henry would be the next guy, next best guy in terms of best player available. So let's go get him. He is like a very athletic speed rusher, but who's also got some good technique on him. Also got some good technique on him. I don't have a player comp for him just yet, but I think he can be a starter, if not a very, very good designated pass rusher. All right. Did my corner go? My corner probably wins. Yeah. Linebacker. Linebacker is another big need we need. We don't need Will. We don't need a Will linebacker. We don't need a weak side linebacker. That's Christian Harris. There's not any Mikes I like anymore. I usually target Tommy Eichenberg, but he's not there. Do we want to double down on DT maybe? We got a nose tackle. We have Malik Collins for another year, but we could get another better guy to replace him eventually. I'm not liking the DTs here. Let's just go BPA. Jonathan Mingo is a great sleeper wide receiver. I would think about him. I would think about adding to the tight end room, though. Now, Luke Musgrave is really athletic, but he's very raw. And so I think here in the 5th round, I'm just going to go for high floor. So I'm going to go Luke Shoemaker out of Michigan. You know that Michigan team, man. They love to run the ball, and so they need great blockers. And Shoemaker is one of the good blockers out there. So we've addressed quarterback. We've addressed running back. We've addressed wide receiver, guard, and center. We've addressed tight end. We've addressed edge and defensive tackle. Now we're really just going BPA at this point, trying to find some value somewhere. Hunter Lupke would be interesting. He's more of a fullback than he is really a running back. So if we want to go into a power running style offense, that could be interesting. Tyke Smith is really good. He's a good nickel safety hybrid. I might go him, to be honest. We haven't addressed the secondary. So let's zero in on the corners and the safeties. I do really like DJ Turner, Riley Moss, and Tuan Mullen. Since there's 3 guys I like there and only 1 safety I really like here, I'm going to go with the safety for now. Tyke Smith out of Georgia. And then, Tia Wallen just wins. I'm going to go Riley Moss. He's a really good zone and man corner. And DJ Turner as well. I'm just going to double down. They're the best players available at this point. Who else? Byron. Oh, this dude. Okay, Nick Herbig and Latu are your sleeper edges this year. I don't know why no one's talking about them, but they're very good. And so is Valami Fahoko. Very productive. I don't remember his stats at the moment. I want another DT, but there's no one really speaking to me. I got so many picks, man. I can just throw these around anywhere. I like Jacob Gall. This is going to be a pure BPA pick. Jacob Gall will be a great backup center for years to come. And if your center goes down, he can step in at center, and you're not going to really have too big of a drop off. So there's my first mock draft. We ended up going the Bryce Young routes, doubled up on the O-line, got Siaki Ika, your starting defensive tackle, got a nice little wide receiver. Maybe Marvin Mims turns out to be a wide receiver too, but he's a deep threat that can open up the offense. A great running back too in Kenny McIntosh to complement Dameon Pierce. He's more of the receiver type of running back. KJ Henry, he can develop behind, Jerry Hughes and Ogbo Okoronkwo. He's kind of that really athletic edge. That may be a bit smaller, but he shows good technique as well. Blocking tight end, Luke Shoemaker, nickel safety, Tyke Smith, 2 outside corners, and Riley Moss and DJ Turner. Depth edge and Nick Herbig, depth center and Jacob Gall. And we got a 2024 first round pick. You love to see it. All right, back to the comments. We put in 50 points, 50 to 51. Okay, this next route, I'm going to try. Not going to try, but I think I'm going to go, yeah, exactly. A Stroud mock next. And so we're going to go with the PFF mock draft simulator. We're going to see what that one's talking about. Let me share my screen. Share. All right. I believe this is my first time trying the PFF one. Does PFF not allow you to go to 7? Okay. Bears on the clock. Start the draft. Get PFF out of here. Brian Bresee? First? That would be like a Trevon Walker type of. Bruh. All right, we've seen a Bryce mock. Let's go with a CJ mock, even though Bryce is still on the board. If CJ's the guy, you know who I'm going for. JSN has got to be the move. Easy. Don't really got to think about it. Wow, Anthony Richardson fell to the second. Ooh, this is a tough conversation between the defenders that I want to get, between Siaki Ika and Devon Witherspoon. See, I would also love to address the O-line. I don't know why Luke Whippler is rated this highly. He's not that good. I would think about Andrew Voorhees. I would think about Darnell Washington, of course. That's one of my guys. Tight end one, low-key. But there's not a lot of other good offensive linemen available here. Oh, John Michael Smith's way down there? Okay, so we can wait a little bit, according to this board. So let's go. It's between Joey Porter, Siaki Ika, and Devon Witherspoon for me. We went Siaki Ika last time, so let's get an elite corner to pair with Stingley this time. I have Witherspoon over Joey Porter Jr. because I think Witherspoon is more physical as a tackler, and he's shown better versatility in coverage in playing man and zone, and he has better ball production. I think he had like 4 interceptions this year. Through 2 seasons, Joey Porter Jr. still does not have an interception. All right, now we're definitely trying to look at O-line, and perfect. John Michael Schmitz is there, so let's go get our center of the future. Simple as that. Don't got to overthink it. Again, in the 3rd round. I talked about Derek Hall last time. I'm probably going to get him this time. The only thing to think about, Jalen Hyatt is here. Jalen Hyatt would be insane to this offense, but we already went JSN, so I think we're fine there. We don't need to double down there. The only thing I'm looking at is a linebacker. I want to get Eichenberg, and I think he's already gone this time. Okay, so that doesn't even matter. Let's just go back to all positions. I'm really thinking about Derek Hall. I don't mind Jack Campbell. He had a great pick on CJ Stroud, funny enough. But I don't think he's that good in coverage. And I really need a linebacker who's good in coverage. How do you read this? The Ravens. What is this like? Is there a trade? Like what's the trade on the board? 73 for. Is there a trade on the board? Am I crazy? Can y'all help me out in the chat? Why is there a 1 up here? Does it mean there's a trade on the board? Or am I just crazy? Okay, Henry, interesting. Overshown. Didn't even look at Jalen Skinner. Hey, we got Jalen Petrie, man. Safety does not have to be a big need. Whippler's bad, Jerry. I think Whippler's like a late day 2, day 3 guy. Eichenberg returned. He was low-key linebacker too. There's one team interested in trading. Eichenberg was after Noah Sewell. He was the best linebacker. So it's just one team's interested in trading. Nah, fuck it. Let's just take their call. Let's take the edge that we want. How do I see like who I've taken now? Do I just click on the team logo again? There's 2 teams interested. Analysis. How do I see? Filter positions? No. I don't know if there's a way to see who I've taken already. Anyways, Hendon Hooker is not falling to the 4th round. Actually, he low-key might because he tore his ACL. Damn, this needs to get Noah Sewell's here. Okay, well, I guess we didn't need Noah Eichenberg. Noah Sewell's my linebacker 1. Everyone says he had a down year this year. I watched some games. I don't think anything like changed with him. You know what I mean? Like it's not like he got slower or something. I just think the defense he was in asked him to play a different role where he was farther away from the ball and he was more of like a slot overhang, weak side linebacker type of deal instead of a pure Mike. You look at his 2021 tape when he's a pure Mike, that dude is constantly in the backfield. That dude is an insane run defender, and he has flashes in coverage of reading the quarterback and picking him off. So I love him. Tyler Scott is a sleeper wide receiver. Tyler Scott is a sleeper wide receiver out of Cincinnati. That dude is a burner. That dude gets open deep with ease. He's going to pick up some steam. He's probably going to test well at the combine. But Tyler Scott, keep the name on the mind. All right. We went with Kenny McIntosh last time. So maybe we'll go a different direction this time. Deuce Vaughn is another running back I really like, but he's like 5'6". Like, he is tiny, tiny. Chris Smith. I might go Chris Smith and pair him up with we kind of need a guard, though, low-key. But pairing up Chris Smith with Jalen Petrie would be a really fun safety duo. I already forget who I took. How do I see? So the teams are Jones Hobbs. Jesus, we have 3-hour stream. Oh my God, it could be. Tyler Scott put up at 4.29. Beautiful. Yeah, Trenton Simpson's interesting. I just think he's limited to like a weak side linebacker role because he's tiny. I think you can get very versatile with him in terms of coverage, in terms of blitzing him, in terms of rushing off the edge. But for what the Texans need is like a pure Mike linebacker beside Christian Harris. They need a big body in there. They need a big body who can beat blocks. And you watch Trenton Simpson, and that dude gets swallowed up by blocks because he's built like a safety. But I might go Kenny McIntosh again just because I think he's the best player here. Layden Robinson, we could get Kenyon Green's teammate, but he kind of had a bad year this year. I'm going to look at Emil Ekiyor later. I'm going to try and get him later because I liked his tape. I think he's a good third-round guard. But we're going to go Kenny McIntosh for now. And then we're going to pray homie does not get picked up. Emil Ekiyor out of Bama. He's another guy. If we go Bryce, it would make a lot of sense. Where's our 6th-round pick at? There it is. Okay, he might not be here. That was a lot of picks that just went by. Psych, he's there. There's our guards. We drafted our center and our guard for CJ Stroud. We now have I feel more comfortable with how the O-line is set up. Now, this board is interesting. I could go Schoonmaker, but we already went for Brevin Spann-Ford is another good tight end. He's massive. He's like 6'7". And we could pair him with John Michael Schmitz, who we took at center. So I kind of like that. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that here in the 6th round. And then we'll probably – I forgot it was only 6 rounds, not 7. Okay, let's get reminded who we took. CJ Stroud at 2. Jackson Smith and Jigua, pairing him up. You got your wide receiver 1 now. Devon Witherspoon, low-key might be my cornerback 1 in the class. So to steal him in the round 2, you love to see it. John Michael Schmitz is the best center in the class. So to get Stroud that protection, you love to see it. Derek Hall is a good sleeper edge, who I think year 1, really good backup. Year 2, solid starter. Noah Sewell, I think, can start probably midway through the season. I think he's really good, man. He's one of the most athletically gifted linebackers in this class. For him to move at his size, the way that he moves, man, you love it. Kenny McIntosh, we talked about him before. I know Ekiyor, I think Ekiyor can low-key start at guard probably late year 1. Probably late year 1, you can put him in there, man. And then Brevin Spann-Ford's your blocking tight end. Improve that run game. Boom. What's good, what's good, what's good? Hey, shout out everyone who's tuning into the stream, man. I know it's been a minute. I've been working full time, unfortunately, the grind. But the film don't lie, you know it, Carlton. But it's because of y'all's support throughout the years on this here very YouTube channel that I was even able to land that job in the first place. So I very much appreciate y'all. And shameless plug to the 33rd team. Check it out. We do a lot of football contents with a lot of current NFL players like Trevon Diggs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cameron Jordan. Who else? We got Ed Reed on staff. Some fun names. When's the next time you stream again? That is a great question. As the season dies down and once the season's over, I should have a little bit more time on my hand. I'll have Mondays and Thursday nights back. I'll have Sundays back, and so that'll give me a little bit more of a life again. And it's not all just work. So hopefully I can do this maybe once every 2 weeks. That's my goal. But follow me on Twitter, and you guys will know of when I plan to do it. I feel like I've heard your voice on there. Yeah, I post sometimes on the. I've made a couple videos for the YouTube channel, for the TikTok account, for the Instagram, Twitter, little social accounts, little social producer, Texans Thoughts over here. But yeah, that's going to do it, y'all. I really was not expecting to stream for 2.5 hours. It is 11:20 for me. And to be honest, my voice hurts. I'm not used to talking 2 damn hours. Lions Mania, you want Ben Johnson as head coach? Yes, Lions Mania, I do. I think he's done a great job for you guys with the personnel that you have, with Jared Goff. I think he's done great in terms of being, building an offense that works for the personnel and being really good in situations, I'm going to say, like 3rd and short, 4th and short, being aggressive and scheming up great play calls, to confuse the defense, to show them one thing 5 times in a game, and then boom, counter it. So I think he's been great with that. Right? And I really wanted a young offensive mind to maximize their future quarterback. So Ben Johnson is near the top of my list, man. Him and Shane Steichen, 1A, 1B. And that's how we going to end it. Nice little come full circle with this stream. Appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. As always, like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate all the support. 100%. Eden, Money Matt, my boy Nolf. Shout out Balin. Shout out Jay. Everyone, if you are looking for another Texans podcast, the Modern Texan has got you. Bringing y'all back to the middle. All right, y'all. That's going to do it for me. Take care. Come back next time. And remember, the film don't lie.